Russian invasion, it has forced over 3.5 million people to flee Ukraine, with millions more expected to evacuate the country in the coming weeks. Countries bordering Ukraine, they're facing the heat of the massive refugee influx. Our next report has all the details. Take a look.
European officials on Sunday said their countries were running out of room to comfortably house some of the nearly 3.5 million refugees who have fled Ukraine since Russia's invasion. Most have arrived at border points in Poland, Slovakia, Romania, and Hungary, according to data compiled by the UN Refugee Agency, putting pressure on the EU countries trying to shelter them. At Poland's busiest crossing, Jorge Galindo, a communications officer for the International Organization for Migration, said there are reports that another surge of refugees may be coming.
We don't know how many people, and we don't know when they will arrive. What we can say for sure is that, after 3 weeks since the start of the war, we continue seeing flows on a daily basis, over 10,000 a day just at this border crossing alone, Medica.
More than 2 million Ukrainians have fled to Poland. In the capital of Warsaw, refugees waited in line for a third day in front of the National Stadium, which has been temporarily turned into an administrative office to register new arrivals. Natalia Strelkova arrived in Poland from an area near the Ukrainian city of Dnipro.
Rockets started to fly and residents saw it. It's difficult. It becomes scary. Panic starts and you want to run away somewhere. It's harder because of children. We were worried that something would happen to them.
Ukraine's deputy prime minister said 7 humanitarian corridors would open on Sunday to enable civilians to leave frontline areas.
That is not all, though. The war in Ukraine has set into motion the first global energy crisis of its kind. And in a bid to strengthen bilateral cooperation in the energy sector, German and South Korean officials held talks in Qatar with the aim to find alternatives to Russian supplies amid disruptions to oil and gas markets caused by the war in Ukraine. Qatar's Emir met South Korean Prime Minister and German Economy Minister. Russia is the largest supplier of gas to Germany, and Berlin has launched several initiatives to now lessen Germany's energy dependence on Russia. In the latest, Germany has agreed on a long-term partnership with Qatar, this to reduce the dependence on Russian gas and further diversify its energy supply. According to Germany's economy ministry, the next step for German companies here would be to enter into concrete contract negotiations. Now, Qatar, it is one of the world's 3 biggest exporters of liquefied natural gas. European states are also counting on LNG as a means of weaning themselves off Russian gas in the wake of Moscow's invasion of Ukraine. Issuing a warning, Germany's economy minister said that if the country does not obtain gas by next winter, after it has cut deliveries from Russia, then the country would not have enough gas to heat houses and keep industries running. Berlin has come under criticism for its opposition to an immediate embargo being imposed on Russian energy supplies as a means of choking off a major source of Moscow's foreign earnings. However, Germany believes that a boycott could cripple its economy, leading to a huge price rise in energy prices.
Russian invasion of Ukraine is a grim reminder of Africa's marginal place within the international system. The spike in oil prices, grains and fertilizers has severely impacted Africans across the continent. From airlines in Nigeria to shoppers in Malawi, multiple sectors have suffered a major blow. More details in this next report.
From Malawi to the Maghreb, Africans are feeling the impact of the Ukraine crisis in wrenching fuel and food price increases. Global oil prices have reached a decade high since Russia invaded on February 24. In Africa, they have doubled. Nigeria subsidizes petrol, but this bakery manager still pays more to bake bread.
Cost of production has increased immensely, so they have to come together and also increase the price of bread by 40% to what it was before.
Meanwhile, diesel and jet fuel prices are sold at market rates. Samuel Salau, a construction engineer, says the price of diesel has doubled from 310 naira or $75 cents.
Within a month, it left that level to about 600 and something plus. and so many industry is on diesel. Trucks that bring in food stuff from the north to the south are running on diesel. Even train runs on diesel.
In Malawi, bread is much more expensive at the supermarket in the capital, Lilongwe.
It is more difficult to buy bread because the price has gone up exponentially compared to before. The amount we paid for 2 loaves of bread is now enough only for 1. We are spending more.
Both Ukraine and Russia are major suppliers of wheat and other cereals to Africa, while Russia is a key producer of fertilizer. The war and international sanctions against Moscow have disrupted supply chains, up to places like Bukavu in Eastern Democratic Republic of the Congo.
Wars can be terrible for supply chains. There can be disruptions, shortages, all kinds of challenges. The biggest example is oil. We've been seeing that. The first sign of war, oil prices begin to rise. But in Ukraine, it is not just oil. Many more commodities are at stake, especially these 3: wheat, sugar, and cooking oil. Let's start with the numbers. Russia is the largest exporter of wheat. They make up 18% of global exports. Ukraine is the 5th largest, making up 7% of global sales. Put together, that's 25%. What happens if this supply chain is disrupted? Shortages and inflation, that's what happens. Ukraine has already banned the export of food grains. Frankly, they had no other option. Ukraine's exports go through the Black Sea, specifically via 3 ports: Odessa, Kherson, and Mykolaiv. All 3 ports are on Russia's radar. Moscow too has announced a partial ban. They have temporarily stopped exports to ex-Soviet states. Imagine 25% of the global supply disappearing overnight. Naturally, there will be consequences. Which countries will be the worst hit? Let me show you this list. Egypt is the biggest wheat importer in the world. Turkey is 2nd. Bangladesh is 3rd. Next comes Nigeria, Yemen, Azerbaijan, and the Sudan. Also on this list are Libya, Lebanon, and Tunisia. Do you see the trend? Wheat is not imported by affluent powers. It is bought by the developing world. And if there is a supply gap, these countries will suffer. The United Nations is making grim predictions. It says food prices could surge by up to 22%. You could.
By the time they reach here, they are exhausted and vulnerable. And to make things worse, they're not necessarily safe. We've been told by multiple officials in Romania and Poland that human traffickers are at the borders, taking advantage of the Ukrainian refugee crisis, luring women into slavery and prostitution, and taking children to sell on. It is an horrific twist on an already dreadful situation.
Hello, Ukraine?
Romanian police have set up checkpoints to stop suspicious cars around the border areas.
Verificăm diferite tipuri de autovehicule, microbuze, autovehicule, știu eu, care prin construcția lor ne-ar putea aduce anumite indicii. De asemenea, conducătorii auto sunt verificați în niște baze de date aparținând poliției române. Verificăm istoricul fiecărui conducător auto și comparăm toate aceste date.
The traffickers aren't always men. Women are often used because they tend to raise less suspicion and are more likely to be trusted by female refugees. A lot of the refugees arriving now don't have family or friends to go to elsewhere in Europe, and so in their desperation just to get out of Ukraine alive, they're willing to go with complete strangers.
What we know, what we're told is happening, is that people are being trapped on Facebook, online, the other side. So by the time they arrive at the border, it's already too late. They've arranged to meet someone. They don't know really who that person is, but the officials can't do anything about it, and they're already victims to human trafficking.
Border Patrol officials that we spoke to in Poland didn't want to go on camera, but confirmed to us that some human traffickers had been arrested and they were hunting for more.
Are not leading producers, but the war is fueling uncertainty. And that uncertainty is increasing prices. By the way, these commodities are not luxuries. They're staple goods. Wheat, oil, sugar. Staple. They're part of every humanitarian aid shipment too. They top every family's grocery list. The developed world will not mind these shortages. They're imposing export curbs. They're protecting their reserves. But what about countries like Yemen and Libya? They depend on aid shipments. Without imports, they will plunge into starvation. That is the reality of Russia's invasion of Ukraine.